What is up, Bitcoin miners? Welcome to another episode of the Build a Mind podcast. I am your host, Trevor. Today, we have another exciting video or another exciting podcast, a good rip. This is a buddy of mine, Tyler Stevens. Some of you may have seen him in the Heat Punks chat or the Loki Rig chat. He's a great guy. I really enjoy, having conversations with him and getting the opportunity to pick his brain about certain things. Tyler Stevens is a thermal engineer with a background in heat transfer analysis and energy systems. He holds a bachelor's in science and a master's in science in mechanical engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His career brought him to Colorado, where he worked as a rocket thermal analyst in the aerospace industry. In early 2024, Tyler left his defense contractor role to focus full-time on Bitcoin mining and energy, with specific interests in ASIC waste heat reuse. He is the founder of Exergy LLC, a business focused on decentralizing Bitcoin hash rate and reducing utility costs with minor heating system designs. Tyler is also a co-founder of The Space, an upcoming physical Bitcoin community hub in Denver, Colorado. It goes without saying, Tyler is very knowledgeable about thermal designs and heat reuse and the things that kind of go into building heat reuse systems. He hasn't really built any heat reuse systems like to a full extent, but Tyler has an extensive knowledge about the different numbers and stuff that go into it. And a lot of today's conversation is just going to be talking to him specifically about his ideas and what goes into it. Tyler specifically wrote the Heat Punks Manifesto, which I will share a little bit of in the beginning of this, and then we'll kind of dive into his history and a little bit about his background and why he decided to get out of the aerospace industry and into the Bitcoin mining industry, which I think is an amazing thing. We definitely need people like Tyler in the Bitcoin space. So I'm super excited about that. Before we talk to Tyler, I want to tell you guys about the Mastermind Club.
Welcome to the Mastermind Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us for weekly sessions led by industry pros, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. From heat management to site optimization, our monthly deep dives cover the technical know-how you need to succeed. And with access to our entire back catalog, you'll never miss a beat. But that's not all. Our members enjoy exclusive one-on-one sessions with veteran miners, plus direct access to special pre-sales and insider opportunities at Bitcoin Mining World. Ready to take your mining to the next level? Join the Mastermind Club today and secure your spot in the future of Bitcoin mining. Visit bitcoinminingworld.com or scan the QR code now. And now back to the show.
Tyler, welcome to the Build a Mind podcast.
Hey, Trevor, good to be with you.
Happy you're here, man. So, you have a very diverse background when it comes to building Bitcoin mining systems. I think you come from a very interesting place in the world as a thermal engineer and an aerospace, not a technician, but a analyst. Yeah, right?
Yeah, all the stuff behind the computer where I wasn't actually using my hands, unfortunately, but
Still, I mean, it's
it was
super
an interesting
important.
background.
It's super important, man. Like I feel like, there's that whole idea that we couldn't have gotten the moon without all the people in the back room. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Those planes don't fly without somebody doing the math and the actual logical stuff behind the scenes. So you're very important. And I think the same thing can be said about Bitcoin and what you're doing today. Before we start, I want to read the first paragraph from your Bitcoin Heat Punks Manifesto. I think it's really important to kind of set the scene for what we want to talk about today. So you wrote, energy consumption is essential for human prosperity. Energy consumption is not immoral. It reflects our ability to harness the inherent potential of the natural world to our benefit. No prosperous society exists without significant energy use, and nearly half of all energy consumption is dedicated to heating. Thoughts?
It's, and out of the gate, just bunch of claims trying to be a little bit controversial, but it's true, right? I think most of us Bitcoiners, especially miners, have all seen that chart, that linear relationship between countries that have more energy consumption in their GDP per capita, which, I mean, we can get into a tangent. GDP, I think, is a false metric, but um, the trend still stands. The more energy you consume, the more wealthy your citizens are, the people of your nation. And so I think we are living through this energy revolution right now, where for the first time, the the change in our society and energy production is not an additive change. It went from coal to oil to natural gas and then nuclear. And now we're saying, let's go back to these intermittent solar, wind, hydroelectric, things like this, these renewables. And they are not a net additive to our global energy production, which means we have to get less prosperous by definition, right?
Mhm.
And you can try and hide that however you want and say it's good. I mean, reduce, reuse, recycle. I still believe in all that. I think you can be a good, efficient consumer of energy and you can be cognizant. But to say someone should use less energy, I think, is a false notion. And you're basically telling someone to be poor. And I reject that claim 100%. And so I'm just trying to paint the picture that we use energy. It's how we become prosperous in our way of life. It's how increase wealth in society. When we tell African nations, you have to jump from this to that renewable and skip all the coal and natural gas and oil in the middle, you're basically telling them you don't get to go through the industrial revolution that we went through. And Daniel Batten and Alex Gladstein, they speak on this much better than I do, but I just wanted to paint the picture there with the start of this manifesto and say, here's the deal. Like, energy is good. You want to consume a lot of energy, and also half of that is used for heat, which is my area of interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that I'm not as eloquently spoken as you are. And it's, someone who's just come into the space, learning from people like yourself, people like Zach Baumsta, Cade Peterson, like you guys have this really, really strong background in your different sectors of knowledge. And getting to learn from you guys and hearing your thoughts and reading these kinds of things like your Heat Punks Manifesto, just like it aligns perfectly with my vision of the world and like the way that I want to see the world grow and
Nice.
prosper. And I completely agree with you. I mean, like people who are saying use less energy, it's like you're telling me to be poor. I don't want to be poor. I want to be wealthy, and I want my neighbors and my fellow man to be wealthy as well. So like we need more energy. We need to increase that prosperity, and we need to build out these systems. And I think that aligns perfectly with the Bitcoin ethos of just, energy prosperity for all, monetary prosperity for all, and just allowing people to make their own decisions and build their life the way that they choose, not having to live under somebody else's rule of thumb. So
100%.
let's before we kind of really dive down this rabbit hole, we've got a lot packed into this episode today.
Good.
Tyler and I had a video call yesterday, and we were just kind of like brainstorming all the things that we want to talk about. And there's a good list. So this might be a little bit of a longer episode today, so bear with us. It's going to be packed full of a lot of information and knowledge, but also I hope a little bit of like fun thoughts and ideations and stuff too.
Totally.
But before we dive into that, I want to kind of set the scene with your experience, your kind of history, and also like your journey into Bitcoin. How did, your aerospace background and your thermal engineering background kind of prep you for understanding Bitcoin and kind of accepting it for what it is instead of trying to change it?
Sure. Yeah, we can dive into that. So I first started paying attention to Bitcoin in November of 2021 at the last all-time high. Obviously, that's when the Google searches were the highest. There was the most buzz about it, right? And I was fortunate. I was moving after leaving Wisconsin from grad school out west to begin my job here in the aerospace industry. And I had driven from the Midwest, so I had a 20-hour drive. And I was like, screw it, I'll just listen to a podcast with Saifedean Moose. He was on, I think, Jordan Peterson I was listening to. That's how I kind of got introduced to it. And that podcast, like out the gate, leaving my parents' house in Ohio, I was just obsessed. And I literally listened to 20 hours of Bitcoin podcasts on my drive to Colorado. So me moving to Colorado was like this transition to this new phase of my life, this new obsession. And I think that's part of it too. I'm a pretty obsessive guy, like a lot of Bitcoiners are, and I'm also disagreeable. Meaning, when I was in grad school and undergrad and engineering, I would always kind of butt heads. Same thing with college athletics. I was a head butter. I have an engineering brain. I like to think about things from first principles. So, you know, tangent, like my best buddies from college are all like economics and finance guys. And I've been telling them about Bitcoin for 3 years and they still don't even bat an eye. So it's just funny how that works.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Colorado and I started this aerospace job doing temperature predictions and heat rates, just how much heat does. I was building simulations for the rocket as it ascends into the atmosphere and into space. And aerospace, obviously, you have to kind of be really cognizant about temperatures because it's really cold. It's near absolute zero in the deep sink of space. And then you've got burning hot rocket engines on the other end. So the full spectrum of heat. And I really liked that job. Thermal engineering kind of clicked with me. Those are the courses I liked in school. And all the while, I was just continuing to attend Bitcoin meetups in Denver and slowly building my knowledge about Bitcoin. And I think you'd probably agree, you kind of have to go through these phases for Bitcoin. Mining is probably one of the last things you really like fully understand. I think it's rare to just jump into mining and not know about Bitcoin. So, that was nearing the end of 2023. I just decided, man, I really got to get into this mining thing. These things are like the most power dense electrical devices on the planet. They turn all of that electricity into heat. Like there's got to be someone somewhere, something has to probably benefit from some thermal analysis. And I was hoping to kind of break my way into it. And then come the beginning of the new year, I literally just decided over winter break, the holidays, I was like, I'm just going to quit. I don't even have another job lined up. I think, you see that on Twitter and stuff. That's how a lot of these Bitcoiners say, if you want to break into Bitcoin, just like show your proof of work, right? So I got back to the office. We watched our rocket launch on like January 13th at like 1 a.m. I was in the launch control room, watched it launch, something I'd worked on for 2 years. That was cool. And then the next morning, like 8 hours later, I went in at 9 a.m. and was like, I quit. And then 6 hours later, I was on a flight to Nashville for the Mining and Energy Summit put on by Bitcoin Park. And I was a total novice. I secured a ticket, glad I spent the money. And I just was, eyes and ears wide open, learned as much as I could. And I really immediately caught on to the pleb miner movement. There are a lot of pleb miners there. Michael Schmidt, shout out to him, Schnitzel, he had brought his hash tub. So he had his hot tub. That was, it was one of the coldest winters in Nashville in a while. There was literally like a foot of snow and he had a hot tub powered by an ASIC out front. And the Econo Alchemist had his kids and him in their swim trunks. And I was just so fascinated about reusing this waste heat, and it's been a journey ever since.
Dude, that story is incredible. The whole like, oh, we spent 2 years like designing this rocket and working on all the like math going into like actually making it launch, and watched it launched, and the next day I was like, congratulations guys, I quit.
Correct.
I think that is like perfectly in line with like the Bitcoiner spirit.
Yeah.
We, especially the plebs, like one thing I've noticed is like this pleb miner movement that you're talking about is we are some of the most like psychotic, crazy individuals that I've ever met. And for some reason, we love to just beat ourselves over the back and just like whip ourselves into whatever it is that we're doing. And you talk about like the obsession that came over you on that 20-hour drive from where was it? Wisconsin?
I was coming from my parents in Ohio. Yeah.
Ohio to Colorado, man. Like you're listening to like all these podcasts and it just like changed your entire like trajectory in life.
I
And
lucked out too because I didn't get into any of the shit coins. Like I totally avoided that. So I'm blessed in that
nice.
regard.
Yes, there you go. You're one of the few that haven't gone through that shitcoin journey, man. That's incredible. I think that's just an awesome story to tell.
Well, thank
And
you.
it's a great story to have. One day you're going to be telling your grandkids like, yeah, I walked in and I quit my job and I started working in Bitcoin and I built this company and like I build heat reuse like projects for people. And like along that, like let's talk a little bit about Exergy, which is the company that you founded. I presume it was in 2022. Is that when you founded the
No, so
company?
I founded that right out the gate in 2024, right after that
Oh,
National
okay.
Mining and Energy Summit. When I started, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to help, and I was exploring this heating angle and thermal engineering angle. And so I just founded an LLC, obviously, to like write things off. And so I could
Yeah.
do 1099 contract work. And I was able to secure my first contract in January, right out the gate, which was nice. I was just doing kind of some market research report, comparing different immersion tanks from various manufacturers, who kind of makes the best one, what's the best bang for your buck. And so that was awesome. I learned a lot. And I just continued to stay on top of it, chat with people, met folks like yourself. And I've just had so many of these amazing calls this whole year. Networking really has been the bread and butter of my work. And it took me a good 6 or 8 months, like literally until the last maybe 2 or 3 months, that I feel like I really had the picture painted for what Exergy could be. It's essentially a consulting business to help design hash rate heating systems. I'm not building or designing my own custom product. We'll get into that later, I'm sure, but most of these systems are retrofitted, and you kind of have to fine tune them and integrate them into your heating need for your home or business. If it's not a little space heater, which guys like Crypto Cloaks and HeatBit and all these other companies have made really cool ones. If it's not that, and you want it to really replace a furnace or a boiler, it can be a little bit more involved, and you kind of need someone to walk you through it, because your HVAC guy and your plumber, they're not going to really know.
Well, absolutely. It sounds like you're taking on the engineering side of it and kind of designing the systems, whereas like someone like Antoine, he's doing the engineering and the construction of it as well. So
yeah, I'd hope to get into the construction soon. What I think I added at the beginning, I'd love to have a construction project. I have a couple clients where it's like nearing there, but you just got to pull the trigger. And then also, if they're not local, you have to fly and help them with that. And Antoine's done great with that. A lot of the folks in Canada are doing it. Side comment, I think that's just because they hate energy consumption there. And they hate carbon dioxide. So it's much easier to sell these things. I love all the Canadian guys. Like, if you look at all the Canadian like hash rate heaters, they're all like, oh, reduce carbon emissions. I'm like, that does not really fly in America.
We don't care about that.
I don't care about that. Some people do, but not the Bitcoiners that want to do the system anyways. But yeah, so where I tried to come in was a lot of these folks that were doing it, Cade, Antoine, what I immediately noticed was, dang, these guys like just are raking in clients. Like, they live in an area where power is cheap, electric power. Maybe they don't have another heat source that's cheap. Like, natural gas is really cheap. It's kind of hard to compete with. And so what I built with my thermal modeling tools and economic, I'm calling it kind of a thermal economic analysis, thermoeconomic. I've had some experience with that from some coursework in school and some other projects before Bitcoin, but I was trying to get to the bottom of, well, what if you're in this gray area? Like, how do you know how much you can save? Is it worth it? Is it not? Because most Bitcoiners, if they're diehards, they'll just say, screw it, let's do it. But I still think there's value in saying, here is actually how much you can save, right? And I touched on that in my Heat Punk Manifesto a little as well. Like, there's really, you can be economically motivated. This is just a cost savings. I don't care about the Bitcoin. I'll sell it. I don't think we're there yet. I don't even know many people doing that. The people that are doing it are probably doing it to stack sats and hoard sats. And then there's the ideological folks like yourself, right? Who are like, I just want to secure the network. I don't care if it's 10% more in my heating bill. Like, I'm doing it anyways. Let's go. And so I kind of put these tools together to understand, okay, how much heat do you use based on the average temperature of the past 20 years where you live and your altitude and the coldest day of the season. What about a fluke really warm winter, right? And then from there, you can kind of back calculate out, okay, you need one miner, maybe two. And then from there, what are the pieces of the puzzle to integrate it into your system? I kind of try and help all through that. And then with some hash price estimations, you can kind of get a predictive analysis that says, here is an average year for you based on historical temperature data where you have your propane heat, for example, and it costs you X. And here's an average year with hash rate heat, and it costs you Y. And what's the ROI based on the miner you picked? So that's kind of what I've done with Exergy, and I've had a couple clients who have purchased that or worked with me on that. I mean, obviously, it's a startup, so I'm just trying to get it out there, and so I'm flexible. I negotiate, but this is what I'm coining as a heat audit. And I think a heat audit is sort of like the first pass assessment, especially if we want these things to manifest into businesses, right? You can't just say, trust me, bro. You need to kind of like show the business case. Even if like your CEO is a Bitcoiner, there might be other people that can say no, right?
Yeah. And
on site.
I also like, we'll kind of touch on this a little bit, but you talk about how like there's 25% of the electricity in the world is used for heat. And
Comfort
so
heat.
comfort heat. Yes, I
That's like
apologize.
space and
Comfort heat.
water. Yeah. Not
Exactly.
industrial like steam.
And so if you think about that 25% number, that's a lot of people in the world using comfort heat. Well,
Totally.
there's not even 1% of I think it's less than 1% of the world's population using holding Bitcoin. And so that's not even talking
Yeah,
about how many
probably right.
people are using it. There's a lot of people that hold it, but they don't understand Bitcoin. So what you're talking about is specifically like how do we explain to normies, people who have never really touched Bitcoin or understand the fundamentals or the first principles of Bitcoin, how do we explain to them how this device that they could set up in their home could help them? And so you're coming at it from this angle of like, we need to explain this better as Bitcoiners ourselves. Like, yeah, someone personally like myself, you tell me, oh, I can put a Bitcoin miner in my house. Like, where do I sign? How do I figure this out? Like, secure the network, decentralize everything. I'm crazy,
Totally.
psychotic, but what you're building is specifically a company that helps people understand the actual numbers behind it. And I think that's super important. People like myself, I come from a construction background, so I'm not good with math and numbers, man. Like table math, napkin math, I'm terrible at it, absolutely horrible. But I can swing a hammer and I can, screw screws and frame
Well,
things up.
perfect. We can help each other out.
Exactly.
Because I need that experience. I like to tinker too. I just haven't had any. Where I live in Colorado, electricity is not cheap, and natural gas is, and so I really have to go up into the rural parts to kind of find people where it's a good fit. And even then, like it's a gray area, like I alluded to. Like it really is a wash. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense, sometimes it doesn't. And the last thing I want to do is say to some person who's Bitcoin curious, maybe, is you should do this, and then like it doesn't save them money, right? Or they get screwed. Like you can't just lie. It has to. There is a total addressable market. There are good fits for this. I believe in the technology, but it's not for every heating application.
100%. And each house, just thinking about homes, each home is different. I mean, you look at somebody like Nico who built the hydronic heating system. His build was completely different than my build. And then what
Mm-hmm.
Cade's doing over in Idaho, it's completely different. And every use case has its own like considerations that you have to take into account before you just throw money at this and try to build these systems. So specifically what you're doing with Exergy is great because all of us, me, Nico, Cade, Antoine, we can all use someone like yourself that helps us explain to our end user what the system is and how it works. And so I think
Totally.
with that, like I'd like to just, reach out to the audience and say, hey, like if you're interested in building and designing a Bitcoin home heat system or even a business heat system, Tyler is a great person to talk to about your specific build. You can give him detailed information about it, and Tyler will kind of help you run the numbers. And
And it's even like before you decide you want to do it and go buy out the parts, like how much can you save? It's really like the first pass. Does this make sense for me? Because I didn't see anyone doing that, and I think that's valuable because there are Bitcoiners out there who have maybe been thinking about it for 6 months, but they really didn't run all those numbers and say, "Oh shoot, you're telling me I can save 70%?" Or maybe someone like I had a client who had like 20-cent power in North Carolina, ridiculously expensive, and he was already using propane, which came out like equivalent if you were to change the units to like 10 cents. I was like, dude, don't do this. Like, you're good.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like my uncle over in California. He was telling me, he's like, yeah, you're really into this Bitcoin thing. I think I want to get some Bitcoin miners and throw them in my basement. I was like, no, stop. Don't do
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, your power is too expensive. You can't do that.
Yeah, California for sure. But
Yeah.
then you have like this guy in North Carolina. He was like, well, technically, actually, it's a place that I rent out and the tenant pays for heat. And I was like, oh, then you don't care what the heat costs. And it's just free passive sats getting stacked for you. So, like, all of these things come into play where sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll send people to you. I'll make sure to link your website and stuff like that
Cool.
so that people can find you. But I kind of want to go into this Heat Punks Manifesto. We kind
Let's
of
do
like
it.
alluded to it in the beginning of this. From a high level, just kind of explain your Heat Punks Manifesto. And I think we kind of understand a little bit of how it was like ideated into your brain and stuff, but like just go over it for us real quick.
So the main point of it is just to show the value proposition of viewing Bitcoin miners not as devices that solely mine Bitcoin, but instead as electrical heating infrastructure that subsidize you with Bitcoin. We're like flipping the view on these. And so they're some of the most power dense electrical devices. And from an engineering perspective, all of that electricity has to be converted into heat. It's essentially 100%. You know, energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred between different forms. So if all of that power is going into the device, it either has to come out as heat, light, motion, noise. And so like we hope your hash boards aren't vibrating, and we hope your machine's not glowing, right? So all of it essentially 100% comes out as heat. And so I was like, okay, these are heaters, and then they just subsidize you with Bitcoin. They're no different than a traditional resistive heater that just uses friction over these resistive elements. You put power in your space heater. That's a resistive heater, but it does no logic. These are just space heaters, resistive heaters that do logic. And so I wanted to flip that incentive and talk about how much it could grow, right? So that's introducing the idea that energy consumption is good. It's not bad to be using energy. 50% of the global energy consumption is for heat, and 50% of that, so 25% of total global energy consumption is for comfort heat, which these devices are good for. They don't have a super high temperature output. They can't boil water yet. Maybe we'll get there, but right now they're great for space and water heating to keep us comfortable. And so I walked through that and all the different, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Too, because for a hash rate heating system, as I like to call them, to exist, we need the Bitcoin mining network to exist, right? You need the Bitcoin network to exist for my heater to work on Bitcoin. But also for the Bitcoin mining network to exist, you need decentralized hash rate. So it's a win-win. It's like, oh, this thing helps the Bitcoin network by being distributed in all these various applications of heating infrastructure across the planet. And then it also helps deliver heat and lower people's costs. So it's a win-win in that regard. And I talked about a little bit, I'm just looking at it here to my left, some economic, utilitarian, and ideological incentives, right? It can save you money. That's the economics. The utility value of mining is that it gives you heat. And the ideological value is that you can get non-KYC stats. You can help support the network, right? All of these things, there's so many benefits to it. And another one that I really like to double click on that people don't maybe say, there's so much FUD about Bitcoin mining. Oh, it uses as much energy as Norway. It's bad. Don't do this, blah, 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 blah. We know all that to be kind of noise, and it's not true. But the average person doesn't. So if you get heating infrastructure that saves people money to be powered by Bitcoin, if there's an inevitable crackdown by tyrannical governments or corrupt organizations to say, hey, this is bad, you shouldn't be doing this, China banned Bitcoin. Imagine going to your Uncle Bob and saying, hey, that heater that saves you 50%, yeah, that's evil. You have to stop doing that. He'd be like, why? I like that thing. And so I'm just trying to talk about all the reasons why I think this makes sense. And then finally, I just kind of conclude by saying, this is a new emerging industry. The Bitcoin network's new. It's nearly 16 years old. Bitcoin mining, obviously in ASIC form, is even newer. And then heating applications is newer than that, right? It's a totally new industry. It's emerging. We need builders. We need innovators. We need people thinking about this, working on solutions. That's what I'm calling a heat punk, myself, yourself. We started a group chat on Telegram. So we've got all the guys working and building and tinkering on this stuff. For too long, where we trying to build our own businesses and not talking to one another, I was like, guys, we can't be doing that. Like, here's the deal. This stuff is so confusing and new. I had calls with all of you individually. Like, let's just get a group chat going. And it's been a huge success. So that's part of it as well. I'm calling for everyone to come work on this. And then the last big thing is probably just that I think it will help hyper decentralize hash rate. You had a great podcast and the mining conference too. Mechanic was there, and the Ocean guys are awesome. They're talking about decentralizing the digital aspect of mining, right? The block template construction and pool centralization, which definitely is a bigger threat. But physical distribution of hash rate, if you think of each heating system as a mining operation, every single person gets to choose what pool they're in. So it helps the digital part too. So I just try to show that relationship too. Like, hey, if we have more machines that are less congregated into megawatt sites, it's just like you got a kilowatt here, a couple kilowatts there. All these people get to choose what pool they're a part of, maybe run Ocean if they've got a home node with the datum protocol. And you can really get full decentralized real mining to help defend and secure the Bitcoin network to process transactions and issue new coins to the network.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot to unpack here,
Totally.
honestly.
Sorry.
So the first thing is that when you're thinking about, you know, securing the, like, when you're thinking about Bitcoin, you know, we agree, and most normies don't understand this yet, but they will eventually. We agree that Bitcoin is the path towards economic and humanitarian prosperity. Like the
Mm-hmm.
world will prosper and be a better place for our children to grow up in, and our children's children's children, because Bitcoin exists. But for Bitcoin to exist, like you were saying, we need all of these kind of different parts of the ecosystem decentralizing themselves. Bob
Mm-hmm.
Burnett, you know, kind of explains it really well, but like
Totally.
it's this whole idea of like the horses, the elephants, and the rabbits. And we need the rabbits. You know, at the end of the day, like, yes, there's a place for the large scale industrial miners, you know, building out the 3,000, 4,000, 100,000 miners in a building. There's a part for that. But there's also this whole idea of like, what happens when it's inevitable that countries decide to start banning this? Well, you can't really tell me what I can and can't do with my 120-volt outlet in my house. Like
Exactly.
there's no way for you to tell me whether or not I can use a space heater or a hair dryer or my computer or whatever. So if I have this machine that decentralizes the Bitcoin network, runs its own server node, and, you know, runs datum protocol, so I can verify my own block templates and create my own templates and stuff like that. It's like I am a sovereign individual when it comes to the Bitcoin space and the Bitcoin ecosystem. And if there's, you know, there's a number that you kind of talked about in our previous conversation, so I kind of want to allude to that and let you kind of riff on it. But this number of like 25% of the world's electricity is
Yeah,
used for
let's talk
comfort
about it.
heating. Well, 1% of that, 1% of that 25% of comfort heating would, what did you say? It would triple the current network hash rate.
So I was curious about this and I was like, okay, how much hash rate could come online if we just start to replace heating systems, comfort heating systems, particularly that 25% of global energy consumption. No new mining power. We're not adding power. We're not taking power away from other things for mining, as all the fudsters like to say. This power is already being used. It's already being generated. It's already used for heat. People want to stay warm. It's actually essential to life. Everybody's always talking about global warming, but more people die from global cooling than global warming, freezing temperatures. So heat is essential, right? That kind of alludes back to that beginning of the Heat Punks Manifesto. And I love the way you introduced it. It's like energy is essential for prosperity. So who the hell are you to tell me what I can use it for, right? So I explored this and I ran some numbers. I was like, okay, the Cambridge, what's it called? Cambridge has a great GUI on they've got a research center that kind of tracks the global energy consumption estimate for Bitcoin network as a whole. It's around 170,000 terawatt hours for global energy consumption of heat, excuse me. And so 50% of that, 170,000 terawatt hours for energy global, 50% for heat, 50% of that for comfort heat, about 170 terawatt hours for the Bitcoin network. So that's like, I'm just looking at my numbers here. Like the Bitcoin network is the comfort heating energy consumption annually is 250 times larger than the Bitcoin network energy consumption. So just being comfortable and having warm water and warm air is 250 times more energy than all of Bitcoin mining. I ran through this. I just updated it yesterday with the 714 exahash. We hit that all-time high around there. And essentially, if you assume that 1% of comfort heat is transitioned to hash rate heat, that would add, let's see here, 1,785 exahash per second to the network, assuming 28 joules per terahash average efficiency, which I think is a fair estimate. So that's saying if 1% of global heating infrastructure, comfort heating infrastructure, space heaters, water boilers, hot water tanks, furnaces, if 1% of that is converted to hash rate, that would essentially add 1.8 zettahash per second to the network, Add that on top of your already 700 exahash per second. You're over 2 zettahash just by taking 1% of the heating market.
And
Incredible.
all of that is decentralized because you're looking at putting it into 800 million homes just in America.
Yeah,
Like that's to me, that is an insane thing to think about. It's like we're all crazy about decentralizing the network and securing it, but doing it in a way that like protects all of us individually. Like 1% is not
I think
that
that's
big of a
conservative.
that's concern. Exactly. Exactly.
I tried to research how much of comfort heat is how much of that 25% is electric heat already, like space heaters, because
Uh-huh.
remember those are the same technologies. You're letting, like, the bill is the exact same. You plug it into the wall. One just does hash and one doesn't.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find an exact number I was really feeling good about, but some of my research was like 8 or 9% of that 25% is electric heat already. So it's like I'm conservatively saying let's just do 1%. I mean, if we did 8 or 9%, you'd be looking at like 15 zettahash, which is enormous, like
That's insane.
enormous.
It's insane. I mean, it doesn't bode well for the industrial miners because, that really just destroys their hash price. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're heat punks. We don't give a shit about your hash
We're
price.
less sensitive to it for sure.
Like 100%. I think it's interesting to think about because we really want this world. Like I've said it multiple times in this episode alone. It's like we just want prosperity for all. Like we want everybody to be able to make their own decisions and live comfortable lives. And Bitcoin is going to play such a huge role in that. And then also individuals it's going to get to a point where someone comes up with a design that can be integrated into multiple different like variations, and people don't even have to touch Bitcoin to be running this. So there are going to be
Definitely.
people who are securing the Bitcoin network and they don't even know it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I kind of want to dive into this a little bit more. Like there is an economic calculation that makes more sense for businesses versus home miners and individuals doing this. And so I
Yeah.
kind of like want you to run through that a little bit. I know that there's incentives for businesses versus incentives for individuals. So why is it more economically viable for a business to get into mining versus mining for heat versus like someone like myself?
I was trying to do some research on this and some writing, and obviously all the guys that are currently doing it, the trendsetters, the Cades, the Antoines of the world, they're all Zach Bombs does all of them. It's amazing. They're all already Bitcoiners. They're already DIY guys. They're builders. They're innovators. They're psychopaths, and I love it. Right, and they're going to upgrade the system. They buy miners anyways to tinker. They want to learn, and we need that. But I was trying to explore for the normies of the world. I like to call them pre-coiners because they're not Bitcoiners yet. Um, you know, does it make more sense to get a home? There are homes that make sense, and that's where that heat audit, that thermoeconomic analysis I can help run, it comes into play. I've got a friend here, DJ Valerie Belove. She's got a great podcast. She's got a mountain home with an electric boiler for heated flooring. She's up in the mountains above Boulder, and it makes perfect sense. She's already paying the bill. It wouldn't be that much. You need one miner to replace that system. It'd probably pay itself off in 2 years. It'd be perfect, right? But when it came to the decision to buy it, buying a miner, buying in a little immersion tank, the pumps and valves, she wanted the fire marshal to come see it. That's like a side comment. There's no like regulation or standardization or safety for any of this stuff yet because it's so new. And the price was a couple $1,000s, $2,000 or $3,000. And, I told her, I was like, Val, you probably should just buy Bitcoin. Like the
Yeah.
opportunity cost of buying Bitcoin is part of it. And so what I came to the conclusion was it makes more sense for businesses for a couple of reasons. They can write this stuff off. They can secure debt so they can amortize it. They don't have to miss out on the opportunity cost of buying Bitcoin. Maybe they weren't going to buy some anyways. Maybe they have a partial Bitcoin treasury or following MicroStrategies. That'd be awesome. But they can buy it with money that's devaluing over time. They can pay it back over time when the money's worth less. So they have that huge benefit there. Additionally, there's this ratio of like, if you think of a heating system, most of them, you buy it, you got an upfront cost, your capital expense, and then, okay, maybe you'd only do that if the system broke or you needed a new build, right? But with a hash rate heater, a lot of the times it's an upgrade, right? You have a perfectly good working heating system. Why would you do that? You kind of need the debt, you want to finance it, but then also there's this ratio of revenue generating assets because the hash rate heaters actually make you revenue. And so if you're going to spend $1,000 on a Bitcoin miner, but then $1,000 on an immersion tank that holds one miner or two miners, you know, a big percentage of your cost is the stuff that's not making you any money. It's just like auxiliary hardware that's necessary to integrate it. Maybe we'll get some solutions in the future that are just like a Home Depot plug and play water heater. So it's super easy and that's less of an issue. But I think businesses, because they use heat in larger quantities, oftentimes it's a bigger warehouse or whatever it is, a greenhouse, they get more miners. So that ratio is more optimal for them. They're getting more bang for their buck for the total upfront cost. You're getting more mining revenue. And the last thing, a lot of residential application homes is you use heat when it's cold out. You need it in the winter. You know, you said you're from Alaska. That's incredible. Maybe it makes more sense up there, especially in the high altitude near me in the Rocky Mountains. It makes more sense. But in some applications, like one of my clients was in North Carolina, like I alluded to, it doesn't get that cold there. And so the amount of revenue he'd generate and his power costs, it was like a 10-year ROI asterisk, assuming a fixed hash price. You know, you could trend that up on the upside because we know Bitcoin appreciates, but hash price is also trending down. So it's hard to understand. But for a business, maybe it's a car wash, maybe it's a greenhouse, maybe it's some brewery or distillery or food drying operation, right? They use heat year round. It's not tied to the ambient climate. So these external factors that adjust how much heat they use tend to be more favorable in business applications where they use heat more often. And the more often you're using the hash rate heater, the more often it's making you revenue. You get a faster ROI, you get more payback. And so it's more justifiable, I think, oftentimes for the business applications.
Definitely. I didn't run the numbers. I did like back of the head, like, oh, this is a great idea. I just kind of want to do it. But I think if I did run the numbers, I probably wouldn't. Well, no, I still would have done it because I'm a psychopath, like you said. Like I really want to be. I want to be a part of this network. Like
Yeah, you don't need to.
I love the idea that like I get to look at my grandkids, 40 years from now, and I get to be like, yeah, I was a small part in a huge revolution that changed the way that the world works. But
Totally.
not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody thinks along those lines of like protecting what they have and what they're trying to create in the world. And so for me, it was like, okay, yeah, the system cost me, $2,500. I think it'll take me probably like, I think it's honestly at the current price of Bitcoin and the current hash rate, not taking in all those other extenuating factors. It's like, I think it's like 6 heating seasons. So it's like 6 years ROI on the system that I have. And that to me is like, oh man, like I could have just bought Bitcoin with it.
So you're touching on something interesting though, too, because, hash price is like impossible to predict into the future. I tried messaging Bob Burnett about that. I was like, hey man, like how do you, and he was like, that's tough. But then also lastly, on the business side too, like it's harder to sell the businesses, right? That goes back to the heat audit because they're more curious, like, hey, I run a business, I got overhead, I got bills to pay. I just want this to save me money. They're less likely to be ideologically motivated by yourself. So it's like, oh, it's better suited for businesses, but it's also way harder to sell it to them unless they have like an orange pilled staff, right? And so that's an interesting comment, and we need to solve that problem just with innovative plug and play solutions. I think building more robust tools that analyze how much you can potentially save, some forward looking predictions of hash price as well, because hash price has a lot of variables. It's the Bitcoin fiat price, which changes every second, your transaction fees, which change every block, every second pretty much, and then your Bitcoin subsidy, which changes every 4 years, and then the network difficulty. So there's 4 variables. It's very hard to predict. We're right now after a halving event, but we're not into full swing of the bull market. So hash price is near historic lows. What I've been trying to do with my models is keep it conservative. I'm saying, okay, the hash price is near historic lows. When the price rips, it's bound to go up. So I try to just keep it conservative. It's like, okay, flat hash price near historic lows, a 4-year ROI, like that's stomachable to a lot of businesses, right? That's faster than most industrial overhauls, right? Some of them could be 10, 20-year ROIs. But I like the way you think about it in heating seasons. I know Zach Bomstead does that as well with Unbound Networks and their space heater tech that they're building. because it really is ultimately for most residential applications that are tied to the weather and the climate. It's just like how many winters essentially does it take for this thing to pay itself off? And the last comment there is if they're already a Bitcoiner, this is where it works in your favor because they know Bitcoin trends up over any 4-year time period. It's never down over any 4-year gap you pick. So
Mhm.
it's complicated. We're gonna have to do a lot of work and polish up our sales pitches to get it into no coiners' hands. And,
100%.
but the value proposition is there, so I'm confident we'll get it done.
Yeah, and people like yourself building Exergy out and being able to run the numbers and give people spreadsheets. I mean, people love, I hate them, but people love spreadsheets. People love being able to look at their spreadsheet and say, well, you put this in and you put this in and you do this and you do that and you get this. And
Dude,
that's
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 so
great.
funny because I bought like a $700 thermal modeling tool that I used in grad school, and I was like, I need this, I need this. It'll help me like tie how much heat people use to their climate and blah 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 blah. And it's a robust tool, and for more complex analysis, it's awesome. But then I realized, well, I can't send these files to anyone because you need the tool to open them. And I was like, damn, I guess I just have to build this in Excel and dumb it down.
You got to dumb it down for us, man. Like I like to say like I'm highly regarded, like, just I'm not like the most intuitive thinker. I don't have an engineer. I mean, maybe I have a little bit of an engineer mind
You
because I
do.
can think about how things work, but like when it comes to math and science, I'm like, huh?
Well, I want my tool eventually. I'm still refining it. Every client, every project is a learning opportunity. One of them was electric heat, one of them was propane heat. I kind of need to build them out to work with any original heating source. Um, Eventually, I'd like to include some way to better predict hash price and all these things. But I'd love a tool like this to just be like open source and on a website. There's so many like hash price prediction tools. Brains has it. Luxor has it. You can go on there. You can play around with numbers. There's a lot of tools out there for estimating how much mining revenue you're going to get. What was your machine cost? What was your debt? What was your interest rate? All this baloney for traditional mining ops that are dying. No one has a tool that really helps you understand the economic value proposition of hash rate heating. And I would love to, refine and polish these tools and then make them public.
Yeah. You're on your way. I mean, you've only been in business for like a year. You know what I mean? So like, I'm very curious to see like how you'll be able to come together with the rest of the people in the hash rate or the heat punks group and the rest. Like, this is the greatest thing about Bitcoiners. And I've said this before. Like, I love how like community focused we are. It's
Totally.
like you alluded to before. It's like nobody is working together on this. We're all kind of like in our own little circles. So like, why don't we just come together and like work on it as a group, and we'll move so much faster. Well, that's happening. Like you read these group chats, you watch what's happening, you watch everybody coming together, working on their own individual piece, but bringing it into the group. It's like, we're moving a lot faster than we were moving. And I wasn't here at that time, but like in 2017, like nobody was talking about hash rate heating. Nobody was thinking about that in this way that we are now. And so we're coming
I agree.
together as a group. And so I am very bullish. I am
Me too.
extremely bullish on like the trajectory of this ecosystem, the hash rate heating ecosystem. And I've said it multiple times, like I wholeheartedly believe that industrial miners, like they cannot survive another 2 cycles doing what they're doing. Like their models, their business models are going to break. They're already starting to crumble at the sides and the base because hash rate is trending down. We've been moving sideways. I mean, Bitcoin's just kind of creeping up on that 67,000 mark now, but like we've been here for 6 months, and like I don't understand, and some people have kind of explained it to me a little bit, but I don't understand how these industrial miners, these pubcos, are continuing to mine at the rate that they're mining. It's like it doesn't make sense to me.
It's like
But
that old trope, like I can remain irrational much longer than you can remain solvent. Um,
exactly.
and you're touching on something very, very important. So the regular mining as a business model, where you find power and you get efficient enough machines, you lock in a power purchase agreement, and you're mining at a profit, and the revenue, you sell some Bitcoin to pay for your expenses, you pay for your staff, you pay for your overhead. That is dying because the Bitcoin block subsidy is being cut in half. Transaction fees are, by their own nature, unpredictable. So it's a less stable revenue stream, right? Eventually, we're going to see that flipping where the majority of Bitcoin rewards, mining revenue, is from transaction fees. You have to find some utility value other than the Bitcoin itself.
Hmm.
And so I'm not saying all Bitcoin miners will turn into heating systems. I'm saying it is a very interesting avenue that I think will manifest and continue to grow. But I also think there will be some people who have the most efficient off-grid or hydroelectric where the power is essentially free, and they can do their mining as a business where they're just mining Bitcoin. They're getting more efficient machines. They've got really cheap power, essentially zero cost power. They own the energy assets. There could also be, um, you know, the utility of curtailment and demand response and helping balance the grid. I think we're going to start to see large mining operations conjoin with power generation. We're already starting to see that. So that's a utility. You're helping do something other than just get the Bitcoin. You're helping balance energy production, especially from intermittence with solar and wind. And then the last one is probably state mining. I think pending like the national security interest in Bitcoin and the realization that this is here to stay and it's in any country's best interest to support it, we'll probably see state subsidized or state funded mining operations where the utility there, I guess, is national security. So they don't have to be profitable at all. They're just going to get money sent to them, printed dollars sent to them. So there's kind of four ways that I think Bitcoin mining will continue on into the future.
Yeah, that's why I'm bullish, man. That's why I'm completely bullish on it. I kind of want to talk a little bit. You have explained to me why it's not quite feasible. We talk about comfort heating. We talk about this association with the 1% and the 25% of electricity used in the world. Why? Right now, we have transistors and chips that don't have the heat threshold that we need to boil water and cook food and use use the heat in different applications, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of thought through it a little bit, like, oh well, what if Bitmain just came out with chips that had a higher threshold? Why is that not, like, that's not necessarily like feasible exactly? And then kind of like I want to kind of take that and dive into like the form factor of these machines and what is
Yeah.
going to incentivize these companies to change that.
Yeah, so I'll do my best here. Guys that are electrical engineers are probably more well spoken on this, like Scott 9000 from the BitX movement. But
Yeah.
I've had a couple calls with him, and he's helped me out a lot. And my understanding is the following: so as you go down in nanometer process, that means the transistors are getting closer together on the silicon chip. I think the S21 is maybe 7 nanometers or five. I think it may be 5 nanometers. S19s were 7 nanometers. I think Block's new chip and their MDK is going to be 3 nanometers. My iPhone here is 4 nanometers. So that's just efficiency improvements. As you reduce the transistor size, it literally takes less energy to send electrons around. And so you can squeeze more efficiency into the machines, right? You can do more for less energy. However, as you go down in size, I think it's called leakage current. You can actually start to get errors where electrons are jumping between traces and they're going where they're not supposed to go. I'm probably, doing this very poorly of an explanation, but my understanding is that as you go down in size and temperature increases, you get more of these errors. More stuff starts to go where it's not supposed to, specifically with higher temperatures. So, the efficiency trend of more efficiency is antithetical to higher temperature, unfortunately. Um, but interesting to note, that's actually not the bottleneck right now, from my current understanding. A lot of chips, some of them are even published on documentation, like from Bitmain's website. They're rated to 100 degrees Celsius, the boiling point of water. It's actually the PCBs, the hash boards, and all of the supplemental electronic components, transistors, resistors, whatever, capacitors, MOSFETs, all that stuff is only rated to maybe 80 degrees Celsius. And then another thing, because these systems come in these form factors, which you teed up for me, is the power supplies tend to be the things that like die under high stress and high temperature. And so there's like, we need to, I think the technology is totally doable and we want to get to the boiling point of water. And why do we want to do that? That's actually the term Exergy, my company, is named after. Exergy is a measurement of how useful energy is. What is the maximum amount of usefulness you can get out of energy, any amount of energy? That's basically what Exergy means. And the maximum amount of usefulness you can get is linked to the temperature. So as the output temperature of the chips goes higher, boiling fluids is a big one. You could maybe run it through a steam turbine, right? You could use that chip to boil water, which turns into steam. And then the steam could be run through something called an organic Rankine cycle or a steam turbine. And it just uses that steam, that high pressure, because gases build pressure, they're compressible, to spin a turbine. And then on the other end of that turbine, it spins motion. So you can turn heat back into motion. You could spin something, or you could put a generator on the back of that thing. You could turn some heat back into electricity. What if these mega miners could turn 10% of their waste heat back into free power? They'd essentially cut their power bill by 10% by doing nothing. So all of these applications are super fascinating. In just the point to take away is that increased temperature gives you more utility, more usefulness, more exergy. And so I think that is something that we'll start to see more focus on in the future. I've tweeted about this a couple times, but you might be familiar with like Moore's law. It's like there's a threshold to how efficient things can get. And if you look at the year over year improvements in machine efficiency, it's like a smaller improvement every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Went from 100 with the 100 joules per terahash with the S9 to then maybe 40 to 30 to 20 to 15 to 18 to 15. So we're getting less improvement. We're getting less bang for our buck. I think that juice is eventually going to be squeezed unless we see some revolutionary new technology or something different than ASICs altogether. And so then what are you left with to optimize with these machines? I think temperature. I think thermal optimization. The only way to get more hash rate in a box, if you're constrained on efficiency, the only way to get more hash rate in a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot box is cramming more power into it. And how do you cram more power into it? You got to pull the power out as heat. So that's your bottleneck. You need to be able to pull the heat off as efficiently as you can put the power in. And I hope that drives the industry to start focusing more on higher operating temperature limits, more heat, more power capacity, more heat capacity, etc. And then I don't know if you still want to talk about the form factors, but yeah, what's your question there?
Well, with the form factors, so I guess I'm trying to think of how I want to frame this. So
Yeah, we got to
we
be nice
have
to the big guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to be nice to anybody. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, like we're heat punks. We don't give a shit. Like, but so we along the lines of like we are heat punks, and we want to build systems that work for us. And right now, a big constraint that we're having is like we have these big, huge shoebox form factors with 3 hash boards in it, with 70 chips on each hash board, something give or take. And that's kind of what we're building these systems around. And a lot of these systems, like my system, thankfully it's behind a wall. I have this big cavity inside my house where above my furnace that it could go in. But you look at this one on like the wall.
You got an
here.
Urlocker kit back there?
Yeah, it's an Urlocker kit. It's got the AC
Shout out
infinity
David
fan.
Urlocker.
This thing is like this long. It weighs freaking 45 pounds. Like trying to show that to someone, be like, yeah, look at this space heater. They're like, what the fuck do you mean? Like that's not a space heater. That's
I
a
get what you're
heater.
going at. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get at is like, what would it take? And how long could we, expect to see chip manufacturers starting to just sell chips instead of designing them on the boards? Because like you were telling me in our previous conversation off air, it's like Bitmain doesn't manufacture the boards. They don't manufacture the power supplies. They don't manufacture like the cases. Like
they outsource it to partners.
Exactly. So what would it take for us to get like a pizza box sized hash board, or maybe even something smaller to where, like Heatbit did something amazing where they reverse engineered their system. So yeah, it's like $70 a terahash for their system, but it fits in this beautiful form factor that is very appealing to the general public.
So you're touching on something very important. And just to wrap up that Heatbit comment, yeah, so they actually, I don't think they reverse engineered. I think they just ended up like these massive order quantities of chips from some supplier, and they just like bled off of that. They were like, hey, please give us a little bit. We have a smaller order quantity. And then they designed their own hash board and control board, and that's fantastic. And guess what? It came out in a beautiful device that looks like you could buy it at Best Buy, right? And it totally is, it's unassuming. You can't tell it's a Bitcoin miner. The cost associated with that is it's more expensive. There's a lot of R&D cost to that. And the form factor is a great point, and it brings up so many questions for the What's miners and the Bitmains of the world, because you're right. We are focused on, using and integrating these things into heating applications. Maybe they're beautiful little space heaters that go in the corner of the room. Maybe they want to slide perfectly into your furnace. Maybe it just looks like a normal water heater that you'd buy at the hardware store, right? But the heating element inside is a Bitcoin miner. Right now, they're only sold in these shoebox form factors. The Hydro machines are starting to, converge on these standardized U factors for servers, but that's more for industrial mining operations. And you can get some boiler out, form factors from that as well. But the point stands, like, if I go to Micro Center down the street and want to build a gaming computer, I can buy the chip I want. I buy the graphics card I want. I buy the power supply I want. I buy the case that I want, the chassis. I buy the RAM that I want. I buy the cooler that I want. And then I piece it all together. And all of these companies get to specialize. Cooler Master makes really good coolers. Corsair makes really good power supplies. AMD and Intel, they're fighting it off to get the most efficient chips. You got AMD and NVIDIA making GPUs, right? I think that Bitcoin mining will transition to that hyper specialization. I think that these Goliath chip manufacturers like Bitmain and MicroBT that have hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into their R&D, they can just focus on making the chips. And then some other company can come and say, hey, we made a hash board that fits perfectly into water boilers. We just need efficient chips. That's it. And they don't even have to be the most efficient. We can buy your last year's model because we have the heat as a benefit. We're not sensitive. We don't care if it's like 10 joules per terahash. Give us 15. No big deal. And so we want the chips to be sold individually. I think we're going to start to see people specialize in coolers. I think we're going to start to see chassis come out in different form factors. Power supplies are a big one because they're a bottleneck with heat right now. They tend to break the easiest. So we'd love to see a really robust and reliable and amazing power supply that's maybe more efficient. All these things pointing to the fact that specifically for us heat punks, wanting to advance this emerging industry, we're kind of slaves to the fact that they only sell us these efficient devices. If I want to be competitive and not have 40 joules per terahash, I want to have, maybe an S19, a couple years old. It's still efficient enough. It saves me a lot of my heating bill. The only way I can get that 20 joules per terahash is by getting this stupid device and then having to tear it apart or design my heating system around it. And then I have to figure out the firmware, and then I have to get a Raspberry Pi to talk to it if I want to control it remotely, because you can only talk to it through the local network. And I got to get custom firmware, which voids the warranty. It's all this bullshit for no reason. Mm-hmm. And so I think showing like that 1% is equal to 2 zettahash, essentially, showing the total addressable market to these guys, that's the reason they're not doing it. They have no need. They're selling millions and millions of these things to the mega mining operations in these form factors. The changing form factors are already annoying to those guys. Like the S21 is what, 40% bigger than the S19? Mm-hmm. But you can't fit as many in a row if you had a rack of an air-cooled mining setup. So it's frustrating, very frustrating for the big guys when the form factors change. That's why the Hydro stuff is good. And very frustrating for us heat punks who don't care for any of the other design aside from the efficient chip. That's all we want.
Yeah. And you're seeing, along the lines of like immersion mining tanks, you're seeing people pull, like, instead of just stacking these boxes inside of their immersion tank, they're trying to figure out how to just pull the hash boards out, connect it to a control board and a power supply.
I haven't seen that.
Not on an industrial level, but I've heard of people like talking about it. And like, it's an idea that's been spitballed over before, just like creating a way to slide these hash boards into a tank so that you have, instead of spacing it out between these, aluminum cases, you just have like 150 hash boards sitting in a tank.
Efficient space usage. Yeah. It could go both ways too. If they still want to sell them in these certain form factors, what I would like to see for the heat punks is like, maybe the industrial miners, like instead of a lot of these machines after their 30-month useful life, like eventually they become obsolete. They're not efficient enough to be in a normal mining as a business operation, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about how they're getting screwed, hash prices going down. Maybe they can like sell their machines to a company that retrofits them into space heaters, right? Maybe they could lock in some pricing deal and it reduces e-waste. That's a win-win. Or maybe altogether they just stop selling them in these form factors, and we can just have them as we want them on the chip, on the individual chip level. And I hope Block does this. I think Block is planning to sell chips and is actually paying attention. They seem to have their head in the right place for what that means for the network, what that means for decentralization.
Yeah, to be, like I said, man, I'm super bullish. It'll be exciting to see where this goes in the next 4 to 8 years, and just having people who are willing to speak up, but then also people like yourself who have the numbers, who can run the data and say, well, like, this is what it looks like. This is what we need. And this is the total addressable market for you. And that's, like you said, that's what incentivizes these big, huge chip manufacturers to actually put effort into designing something.
Yeah.
It's just really exciting. Like, I know that a lot of people don't really care about this stuff, and it's only us heat punks who are really focusing in on it, on this particular thing. But man, it's so exciting to see where it's going to go from there. We're kind of actually getting to the end of like what we wanted to discuss. I'm not sure, is there any other things that you kind of really want to like touch? Oh wait, no, there is something.
Tell me.
You can't really talk too much about it. I know that, it's still in the works, it's still in the process, but you are writing a book. Tell us anything you
So
can tell us about this.
it will be coming out in the beginning of 2025, and all of the stuff we've been talking about, all the amazing guys in the Heat Punk group, all the companies that are doing amazing work. There's many in Europe, like Riot, which is making a Hashrate boiler. A lot of their systems are hydronic heating. We didn't talk about that, but in the US, it's mostly air-based heat. But in Europe, it's a lot of water-based heat. All these little like nuances and niche things that I learned over the months of this past year. How do you integrate it? What the heck is the best custom firmware? How do I set it up to a Wi-Fi thermostat? How do I control it based off of a Google Home thermostat, a smart thermostat? I want it to be completely normal, like any other heating system. I don't want to notice any difference in performance. Why are they good for comfort heat, but not for industrial heat? Why is it better for industrial businesses more often than residential applications? How do you walk through the heat audit? Like, am I good? Like, what's natural gas is dirt cheap in America because we didn't blow up our oil pipeline. So, like, should I do it if I have natural gas? Probably not. All this stuff, why are all the incentives aligned? The Heat Punk Manifesto, everything I've learned for the past year chatting with all you amazing guys, I've been taking a lot of notes, and I realized, damn, I really wish this was just like consolidated into a book format. Like, I wish this book already existed, essentially. And so I'm putting it together into a book. I've got maybe 2 chapters left to draft, um, wrapping up my manuscript. But the whole point is, I'm not trying to explain Bitcoin mining. There's plenty of books out there that are great that do that. Shout out to my friend Rob Warren, who wrote the Bitcoin Miner's Almanac. You should have him on the pod. He did a great work with that. But it's intended for people who are Bitcoiners. I don't have to sell them on Bitcoin. They know proof of work has to be the method that Bitcoin is secured, the network and blocks are processed. They don't need to be convinced of that. Maybe they're a mega miner, or maybe they're just a pleb like you, and they're thinking to themselves, what more can Bitcoin do for me? What value can it add to me? What can mining do for me? Or what can I do for the mining network? Why should I do this? And so it's walking through all of these different things, telling the reader about the value proposition, the total addressable market, like we talked about, some challenges and innovations, which we could maybe talk about. I'm happy to dive into that. We didn't do that yet. Like, what are our roadblocks? What are possible ways this plays out? What are new business models that come out of this? All through the lens of hash rate heating.
Dude, I'm excited for it. I can't wait. I think you should help me connect with the author of the Bitcoin Miners Almanac. If you could help me
Totally.
connect with them, I'd love to have them on the podcast. But so I personally, like, I love to read. I don't do as much as they anymore, and because I'm just so
Nice.
busy all the time. But one of my favorite things to do is just like go to the gym, walk on the treadmill at an incline, and just read my book. And everybody always comes up and asks me, like, what are you reading? And I'm like, oh, it's a Bitcoin book. And they're like, but like, I love to read Bitcoin books. And so, like, when your book comes out, let me know, because I will send you some sats, and I want one of the first copies that comes out. I don't care if it's got a cover on it.
I'll hook you up. Don't worry
like,
about it.
send it to me. But is before we kind of get into like the challenges that confront us as a community, where can people go if they want to help donate to this cause? Because it costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of like upfront cost to make something like this happen, get it published, do all the details. So where can someone like myself or others who want to like donate to this project go to help you out?
Oh, well, people don't need to do that. I mean, I enjoy it. Like, that's the beauty of it, right? Just going back to where I was doing 1 year ago at a slave job for the Department of Defense, which is like antithetical to Bitcoiners. Like, um, I'm just having so much more fun. I enjoy my work. Every day is a blessing. I get to hang out with Bitcoiners every day. I'm working with Bitcoiners every day. I'm chatting with Bitcoiners like yourself every day. But if people want to support me, they can go to my website, my personal website, which links to everything I'm doing. It's got a Bitcoin address on there if people are feeling generous, but no need at all to do that. It's tylerstevens.me. You can kind of find some of my blog posts, some pointers to other presentations I've given. I'll have my presentation from the mining conference up there once that's live, and everything else that I'm working on. I've also got some portfolio work about some other like thermoeconomic analyses that I've done. If people are curious, they can go check that stuff out. So that's the place to do it, tylerstevens.me.
And that's where people could also kind of reach you if they want to like run over some numbers for their own personal system.
It links to my Exergy business
Okay.
website, but yeah, you can totally book a call with me from there, and happy to chat with anyone who's thinking about these systems, who's curious. We can get some numbers run and figure out if it makes sense for you, for sure.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that that gets linked into the description of the video. But let's dive into the challenges and roadblocks that we face as a community. We kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what are these things that are going to cause us to stumble when it comes to building out this network of hash rate heating?
So we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and you've built one out, and I built an S9 space heater for myself. I actually built a second one for my buddy for his wedding gift. I had to
Nice.
3D print a nice, like, pretty olive green case for it, so his wife approved, right?
Yeah,
But that's
wife
actually
approval
one of the
factor
challenges,
matters,
right?
man. That
That's
is
one
a
of the challenges.
challenge.
So they're easy to do for us if you just put the time in. But what I like to say to people is, okay, they don't cost that much if you buy a used ASIC and some other stuff and you put the time in to figure it out, right? But time is valuable. We're Bitcoiners, right? Time is like the only thing more valuable than our Bitcoin. And so if you think about it through that lens, this stuff is just the barrier of entry is too high right now. We need more plug and play solutions. You can't like I'm happy to run a thermoeconomic analysis that says, oh, the numbers look good. Let's go forward with this. You're going to cut your heating bill by 80%. Let's do it. The math says you need one miner, one immersion tank, one pump, one heat exchanger. We got it all pieced out. We got the bill of materials. But if you're 5 states over from me, like I can't tell you to call an electrician and a plumber to install it. They will have no idea unless they're your friend and they're willing to do it. So education's a big challenge. How do we get education for tradesmen to want to offer these systems? There's no certification standard. There's barely any safety standards. Like another shout out to HeatBit, they have UL certification for safety. It's got tip over protection. If it tips over, people want that, oh, did a piece of lint or a piece of carpet get in there and is it going to light on fire, right? If it's an air cooled machine. So there's a lot of like nice to have features and just, it's kind of antithetical to Bitcoin and my anarchist mindset, but like all the bullshit bureaucracy, I think has to kind of come into this industry for it to scale to the masses. And I think we'll start to see that over time. I would love to see some trade associations start to offer a course that educates electricians and plumbers and HVAC guys about this new technology that they can use. And they're incentivized to do it, right? We can talk about business models after, but what if your contractor says, "Hey, I'm going to install this thing. We'll do it for cheap. Also, I'm just going to monitor the system health. I'll convert the sats to dollars. Maybe you don't want Bitcoin. I'll just send you or we'll subsidize your heating costs. And oh, I'm going to take maybe 5% of the hash rate for doing that." And then he's incentivized to say, oh, hey, I hope this heating system doesn't break. I want it online because it's paying me every day. So it's an opposite incentive. He's not waiting for your system to break. He's not saying, oh, I hope they don't change their air filters because then I get to go service it and make more money. He's saying, no, I'm incentivized for this thing to be healthy, to be online, then I get paid consistently. So challenges with technician education, tradesman certification, safety, ease of use, right? Just more plug and play. And that's going to be required to be combined with the new onset of new products and devices that are designed out of the gate to be hash rate heaters. I think we'll see more stuff like HeatBit. There's plenty of other companies. There's a company in Canada called Hestia, which is building huge industrial furnaces with S19s and S21s inside of them. Goes back to our form factor comment, like why the hell do they have to retrofit these machines? They should just be able to build them with chips. But there are many challenges for it. Lack of technician education. I'm looking through my notes here. Consumer reluctance due to complexity. We're going to get the DIY guys to do it and the Bitcoiners. A lot of us tend to be doers. We want to do it anyways. but there's also a lot of Bitcoiners out there who are not hands-on. They believe in the monetary protocol. They want inflation-proof money. They'd love to support the network at home and mine, but they just aren't technically inclined enough to do it.
Yeah,
And then the last one, sorry, let me just
no, go
finish here,
ahead.
is
Go ahead.
probably industry competition. I'm actually really curious about this. So as more education comes out, we see the value proposition. What's going to stop Whirlpool or GE or these Goliath heating companies from the HVAC or plumbing industry who have literally been making heating infrastructure for over 100 years? What's going to stop them, these billion-dollar companies, from saying, yeah, we'll hire 100 guys to build this product and then we can offer it better and cheaper and faster? And that's going to be hard for new companies to spin up and compete with, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good point. We kind of talked about it yesterday. They've got all these trade shows for plumbing, for pool heating, for all kinds of different
Exactly.
industries. And these Goliaths, they kind of like run the show. And so really, I think once that first domino falls, it's really just a matter of time after that. Once GE kind of figures out, oh, like this is actually a feasible thing to do. And it goes back to that total addressable market thing. It's like, well, what would it cost for us to integrate this into our water heaters? And you talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. It's like, what if you could just go to Home Depot and
Hmm.
buy a water heater, and it said the only difference is now you have to make sure that it has connection to an internet. You know what
That's
I
one of my
mean?
favorite business models. So imagine this, it's a water heater sold at Home Depot. Doesn't even say the word Bitcoin on it anywhere. It just says smart water heater. It's 10 times less price. It's like $50. And it just says, okay, plug it in. It's got the normal cold water in, hot water out hookups. Any plumber can plug this in. It just also has a Wi-Fi little control board on the top and a little screen, and it just says, "Hey, connect this to the internet." That's all it says. Okay, you do that. It's 50. It's $50. It's 10 times cheaper. The device is mining Bitcoin for the company, and the company
Mhm.
keeps all the Bitcoin. And because they get to keep all the Bitcoin, it's passive hash rate. They get to just undercut the cost and outcompete everyone. And then what I'm describing here is like this decentralized mining company. Huge. I mean, this could be a huge company that
Mhm.
just makes decentralized hash rate. They could have megawatts of power, megawatts of exahash of hash rate under their belt, but it's all physically decentralized in heating systems across the globe. So there's tons of interesting business models. Going back to the one I talked about, the tradesman who's incentivized to do it, or a distributor model. Nicholas with Constellation Heating, he's doing amazing work building a pool heater, right? He's just focusing on this pool heater market in Canada. And I think that's awesome that he's working on a plug and play product, because that is what's going to really help with the less technical Bitcoiner adoption, the people who don't want to do it themselves. And so he can go to one of these cool trade shows, and just say, hey, get your contractor staff, your team as a distributor here. We'll get a distributor in your local area. You guys could offer these pool heaters on new house builds for free, and just say, we're going to keep all the power. Like the contractor keeps all the Bitcoin mining hash rate. So there's infinite business models. You could tweak the percent splits infinitely. It's fascinating to see how this plays out. I'm really curious.
Well, and I'm super bullish on it. And you see this really terrible thing, and it's called planned obsolescence in a lot of industries, where they
Yeah.
literally plan on the machine breaking because they want you to come back. I mean, it's the reason why you have to buy a new iPhone every 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Like I bought my Android phone like less than a year and a half ago, and it's already starting to wig out. So it's like
Or the
it's
reason they change like the headlight design on cars to make you feel like
exactly.
yours is old.
Exactly. It's the same exact thing. But what you're talking about, what you're kind of alluding to, is this idea of like, well, I want this decentralized hash rate. I want this distributed hash rate. I want it to continually be working for me.
Hmm.
So why do I don't want any downtime? I want it to be up all like the incentive is for the provider of the product to build a stronger, more robust product that will stand the test of time, and so they can benefit on the back end. And I think that that's a curious business model. It's a curious thing because it to me that just means more integrity. Like yeah, they're incentivized because money incentivized drives the world, and they want to make more money so they're more profitable so they can pay their employees, yada yada yada. But
They want to
as
design better products that last years
that's
on end.
that's
Exactly.
the thing. That's the thing. And not only does that create this whole like revolving cycle of like, hey, we're building better products, like you don't have to come back to us. But
I was
also
taking a
it's
note of this. This is a great point. I didn't think about planned obsolescence.
but it's, and then also think about this, it's reducing waste. Like there's this huge factor in the world of
Yes.
all this e-waste, all these old computers, old like technology devices. Well, it's like if we stopped planning things to just like die out over time so that people come back and buy new ones, it's like, no, we can reduce the amount of like waste and garbage that is going into the world, I guess. I don't know how to
It's
frame
just
that.
another example of how Bitcoiners are being more efficient with their energy consumption, right? The guys hunting cheap power are hunting waste, energy that would have been put to waste anyways. Us hash rate heaters, we're hunting wasted energy that's just being used for heat that can do two things at once. Why would you not, right? And so we are, the apex predator hunting for optimization areas for more efficient energy consumption. And so you can't really refute that.
No, no, you can't. I like how you put that apex predator, man. Like Bitcoiners
Yeah.
are apex predators hunting energy. That's
They are.
awesome.
They are. And then the last thing is just like the carbon thing is actually, I clowned on it a lot, quite a bit on this episode, but it is a selling point. Seeing this trend where people will literally install heating infrastructure that costs more and is less efficient on a cost basis because it releases no carbon emissions.
Mhm.
Obviously, your power generation can still be powered by coal. Where I live in Colorado, it's like over 50% coal. So when I go ski at Vail Village and they've got signs like carbon neutral by 2030, they're literally on every street corner. I just laugh because I'm like, oh, for sure, guys. Like it's
Yeah.
they just want you to feel good about themselves, right? It's total virtue signaling. But you now have a way to say we can install electric infrastructure that releases no carbon emissions on site, and it actually is cost competitive. It actually is cost competitive, and it actually does something useful, which I think is more useful than measuring our carbon release in the atmosphere. The more useful aspect is it's helping defend and secure the Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin network protocol. So I think that is actually a good selling point. You just got to be, cognizant of who you're talking to and what they value, really. But it is a value add.
Yeah, everybody comes at it from something different. Everybody's got their own like incentive, I guess. Like I think about my wife. This is a funny story. So I was building out the like I'm deciding I'm going to build out this heater, like yada yada yada. She's like, okay, whatever. I don't care. Just like make sure that it works. When I told her that I could install this filter that went onto it, and I could put a MERV 8 filter material on it that would filter all of the air inside of the house, giving us clean like filtered air. My wife is like super big on that. Like we get a lot of fires in Southern Oregon, and
Sure.
the northern winds push it up into our area. So like we had smoke in the area not too long ago, and
Yep.
what I ended up doing is I shut the miner down. I pulled the fan like off the miner, and I just started running it through the fan. And she like I walked inside my house and it was like smoky outside, but it was like nice and clean air inside my house.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
for her, that was the thing. Like it was so weird to me because it was like, yeah, babe, we're
Heatbit
gonna
does
make
that. Yeah, that's a great
yeah.
point. Like you can
It,
add these other features, HEPA filters or whatever they may be, to add increased utility to the devices for sure.
yeah, and it's just weird because people come at it from different things, and like there's so many use cases that people aren't even thinking about when it comes to like what applications these these systems can do for us. And so it's just
That's why
like I
I'm so
said,
bullish. Like
exactly.
when you go on any of these energy websites, I've been, when I was trying to research how much energy is used for heat, right, and how much is used globally, every single one of them, without fail, is some climate cultist, alarmist bullshit about how the world's going to die, right, if we don't stop releasing carbon. Every single one. It's like infuriating. It's like I just want the number, dude. Don't give me some like manifesto about how climate's going to, blow up. But I noticed there's like an active measure to try to get more electric heating infrastructure. It is a goal of theirs. And the main thing that they're going for is heat pumps, which don't actually generate heat, they move heat. It's like
Hmm.
an air conditioner in reverse. It moves heat from outside. Even if it's cold out, you can still get some energy from that heat from the air molecules and put it inside. They're like 4 times more efficient than electric heaters. You like put 1 watt of energy in, you get 4 watts of heat out because it's actually moving the heat from outside. But they don't work at high altitude or in super cold climates because the air has less energy. So there's a limit. And so that's like more useful information for our total addressable market. It's like, okay, well, I live, there's guys I know that live at 10, 12,000 feet. So a heat pump's not going to work for them. And so if they want to, complete this goal of getting to electric heating infrastructure, what makes the most sense for them? A hash rate heater.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, Tyler, I have a couple of questions for you that are philosophical. You might have heard them before, but
Okay.
I want to know, as someone who does a lot of thinking about the Bitcoin mining industry, the Bitcoin industry, hash rate heating and all this stuff. What is something that keeps you up at night?
Honestly, what it's been lately is just continuing to build and add value. I'm pretty self-critical. I think a lot of Bitcoiners are, and I immediately noticed, like, it didn't matter what my salary was at the launch company for rockets. I had to break into this industry to try and add value. I was so obsessive about something. I have a very obsessive personality, like I said. I just want to add value to the world. And I saw that with Bitcoiners. It's the first time since, having your best group of guys in college athletics that I felt that I had a community that I really wanted to spend time with, grow with, become friends with their families, and build something special and add good to our local area around us. So that's something I'm really passionate about. It's actually why I helped co-found the space, which you mentioned at the beginning. It's no longer upcoming, by the way. We opened on October 1st. I'm
You're
actually
in
in
it
it
right
right now.
now. I was gonna
Yeah, so
say.
we've got a Bitcoin Citadel out in Denver, akin to Bitcoin Park in Nashville, or the Commons in Austin, and PubKey and those guys. And so if you're ever coming through Denver, make sure to swing through. We've got a website with public events, and we're doing a lot of cool stuff. And we've got a launch week of opening party activities mid-November. So you can find that stuff at denver.space online. But that's like been my big focus. And I hate to say it's even kind of taken a lot of my time away from Exergy consulting and building the business right now. I love hanging out with the community. I love having these conversations. That's what I strive for. I wake up, it's my favorite thing to do. Makes it kind of hard to actually get work done sometimes, but these kind of conversations are just like injected into my veins, man. I love it.
Yeah. But you kind of like danced around the question a little bit. Like, what is something that like you're fearful of? You know what I mean? What keeps you up
Okay,
at
I
night?
missed it.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
um I really want to make sure my work is good. I've been stressed a little bit lately trying to finish this book on time for a deadline. Like, I want the book to be good. I just don't want to. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I got that wrong. I don't want anything to be blatantly wrong in the book, but I want my work to be recognized as helpful to people. And
Hmm.
that's kind of something that I've been stressed about more lately. Other things that keep me up at night, I'm looking forward to starting a family. I'm getting to that point in my life where that's what I'm thinking about. I have a beautiful, loving girlfriend who I love very dearly, and I want to build that out into a long-lasting relationship. And I'm looking forward to starting a family, growing with the community around me. A lot of my friends have started to get married in my age. I'm 27, so you're getting into that range outside of college. A lot of weddings and all that stuff. I've been thinking about that lately, and my family as well. I'm the only one out west, so my family's in Ohio. Most of them are on the East Coast, extended family. It makes it tough. All my little brothers are in college right now. I would love to spend more time with them. They're in the Midwest. We all went to Big Ten schools. They're at Purdue and Indiana. I was a Wisconsin guy. My sister was at Ohio State. So they're all in the Midwest and the East Coast, and I'd love to get them more out here. That's why I'm trying to build stuff like the community here and the space and everything to draw attention to where I'm at. I absolutely love the Rocky Mountains in the Western United States, the dry climate. So I'm trying to, create the world that I want to live in, and the people and help the people that I love, and I want them to prosper with me.
Yeah, you're trying to be the change that you want to see in the world, kind of thing.
Hope
You
so.
know, to me, all the outside factors aside, like family is the most important thing. And one thing I
100%.
really enjoy about Bitcoin is Bitcoin gives you the ability to think further ahead. You get this low time preference idea of thinking about your future and what you want to produce into the world. And for me, like all I really care about, man, like everything I do because I have one focal point, and that one focal point is my wife and son. Like creating a
Incredible.
atmosphere, a space, an ecosystem, or just a life, you could call it, for my son and my wife to be healthy and happy and grow up to be responsible and respectful and kind. Like, that's really all I care about. Like, when I'm 85 years old and knocking on death's door and I'm getting ready to like exit this world, like, I want to be able to look back and say, like, my family, the people that I surround myself with, they're the ones that are the most important, and they appreciate me for the things that I did. I don't want to be 80 years old and saying I worked my entire life to give something to my family that they don't even appreciate because it's not what they wanted.
Oh,
You know?
100%. It's your purpose, right? I guess that goes back to answering your question. That's what I was trying to say, but I was doing it poorly. Like, just having a purpose and, having a wife and son, that's what I'm so looking forward to, right? It kind of just kicks you into high gear. You have this newfound purpose that you can't keep your mind off of. I'm really looking forward to that. And that ties back to what I was trying to say. Like, I felt like I had no sense of purpose working for the Department of Defense
Yeah.
contractor, right? Literally no sense of purpose. I had nothing in common with anyone that worked there. They all loved printed money. Every single cent that went to that company was printed by the US government. They never
Mhm.
made a free market dollar in their life. And I hated it. And I had no sense of purpose. I'm in startup mode right now. I'm making 10 times less than I was last year, but who cares? Like, I
You're
have so much
happier.
more purpose. Exactly. And that's the meaning of life, really. And it's been a journey, and I hope I can say that I never have a W-2 job ever again.
Yeah, dude, congratulations to you, brother. You are an inspiration, a testament to what can be achieved if you stop focusing on number go up and like how you can benefit from others, and you start thinking about how you can benefit others.
Yep.
I appreciate you. I appreciate the
Thank
time
you.
that you've given me. I mean, it was really cool just being able, like, one more thing I love about Bitcoiners, and I'll stop belaboring on this, but I love the accessibility of everyone. It's like you reach out to someone who you would think like, oh, this person's never going to give me the time of day. It's like, no,
No
like,
one's
go.
holier than thou. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, and
you're
I
right. And
absolutely love
Bitcoin,
it.
well, thanks for the kind words, but Bitcoin unlocks this, right? It's kind of, people say it's FU money, but it really does change your mindset. Like, when I started saving in Bitcoin, canceled my 401k, all this stuff, I have I'm a radical to some, but to me, I'm just like a rational guy who saves in money that can't be tampered with. And it has afforded me the opportunity to work on things that I hope can benefit others. And it's helped me find my purpose. So 100% agree.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. It's beautiful, and I think you kind of answered my other question, but I'm gonna ask anyways because maybe you could give me like a 3-word, 4-word answer. But what does Bitcoin mean to you, Tyler?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask this.
I always do. I always do.
To me, it's ultimate freedom. Like, the libertarian in me, you can clown on, like, okay, I lost it all in a boating accident. Come test me, Fed, right? There's that angle to it, but it's very real, right? Like,
Yeah.
my whole worldview has changed because of Bitcoin. You know, Sometimes we annoy others because we never stop talking about it and preaching from the
Yeah.
high tower, so to speak. But it has totally changed the things that I care about. I've regained my focus on family. I've regained my focus on health, what I'm eating, my workouts, everything. It has completely changed my life. The kinds of people I associate with myself with. I'm not going to parties. I'm not on the prowl. All this stuff. That is what I'm most thankful for with Bitcoin. I have the peace of mind that I know that this cannot be tampered with. I'm doing it right. I've got cold storage, etc. So I can just say, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to spend my time doing what I like, and I'm going to make it work. And that's how it's going to play out.
Dude, perfectly put. Perfectly put. I align with that wholeheartedly. Like, that's why we're here. The mission is to become the best version of ourselves possible, and the only way that you are afforded to become that is if you have the best money possible, because time is money. You spend every waking hour trying to get money, and if that money is being eroded and devalued through time, then you're on this
Exactly.
treadmill. Now we're not on the treadmill anymore. We stepped off the fucking treadmill. We're walking.
It's such a sense of relief, like just
Oh,
weight taken off your shoulders. I couldn't imagine being a degenerate trying to manage my stocks in Robinhood like some fucking loser.
like some
I,
fucking
I,
loser.
and I, like, that's a harsh way to say it, but like, that sounds miserable to me. That sounds
Right?
absolutely miserable.
Right? So, I went through that. I went through that. Okay. Like I'm 27 as well. Okay. Like I'm not even 30, but like I've been in Bitcoin for just about 4 years. Like in 2025, it'll be 4 years for me. I remember getting married, or no, we bought a house in 2020. I remember buying the house and thinking, this is not enough. I want more. And then also thinking, how the fuck am I going to make that happen? Like, there's no
Yeah,
way I can't do this. And I went through a very dark, depressive moment where I was like, I don't
I'm
know
sure.
what to do. And so then I started like evaluating stocks and stuff. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to get into the stock market. I'm going to start investing my money and trying to like get farther ahead. And then like, I think it was Warren Buffett or somebody in that sphere that said like don't invest in something that A, you don't understand, and B, you don't align with. And I was like, okay, so I'm trying to understand these companies, and then I'm like, I don't align with any of these values. I don't align with anything that's happening. So like, what the fuck am I doing? And I went deeper down this pit of like depression, anxiety, sadness, fear, and then it was like, as soon as I found Bitcoin, it was like this orange light that just carried me upwards. And I was like, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be
That's the
fine.
mission. That's the
So
mission. I'm trying to live that to its fullest, building a community, educating people around me, offering events to help with that. And also I think hash rate heating will help increase adoption. There's no way it doesn't, right? Bringing you more utility, more benefit into people's lives.
that's the purpose of it, man. That's what you're doing with Exergy. That's what you're doing with the space over in Colorado. Just don't stop doing what you're doing. The ecosystem needs you. We as the Hashrate HeatPunks, we need you. And I am super appreciative of you and all the guys like Antoine, Cade, Scott, Zach. Like you guys are absolutely incredible people, and it's been fun to get to know you guys. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Of
Real
course.
quick, you kind of already told people to go to your website, but is there, send them to your Noster, send them to your Twitter profile,
It's
anything
all
else
on
you
my
want to show?
personal website, just
Okay.
tylerstevens.me. You'll find Exergy, you'll find the space, you'll find my socials,
Okay.
everything.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
And
Awesome.
we'll have to get you out here to Denver for the space. I'd love to do this. Is actually, once I finish the book, I want to do a Heat Punk summit. And we actually will invite some electricians, some guys that aren't Bitcoiners, because
Okay.
we want to solve these challenges, right? We
Okay.
need everybody in the room, shake hands, shoot the shit, and solve these problems and showcase the value of this exciting industry.
Dude,
So we're going to make
absolutely.
it happen.
I love Denver. It's only about a 32-hour drive. Me and my wife will hop in a car, bro. We'll drive out there. No problem. 100%.
Nice.
So
Nice.
awesome. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on the show today. This was a lot of fun, and we're going to have to do this again sometime, man.
Of course. Thanks,
All right.
Trevor.
Yeah, for sure.
Catch you later.